Ever since I ended up in a wheelchair due to an accident 2 years ago, my husband and mother-in-law's attitudes have become noticeably harsher. Sorry, but could you please leave this house for a second? I couldn't comprehend the words my husband suddenly uttered one night. What? What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. My mother and I talked it over and decided. Do you mean you want a divorce? Yeah, that's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time now. You can't earn a penny. His words came out like blood from a clenched fist. I understand. Thanks for everything. And lastly, thanks for leaving me with nothing. Leaving those words left my seat. The time for them to understand those words will only come a little later. My name is Mary Johnson. After graduating from university, I've been working at my current company for 10 years. Well then, I'll be heading out. Thanks for your hard work. Thanks for your hard work too. I closed my laptop and got up from my seat, looking at the clock by the window. It was now about 2 hours past overtime. A meeting that came in the afternoon had run late, and as I was preparing for a conference and responding to emails after my regular hours, more time had passed than I expected. I left the office, got in the elevator, and went down to the first floor. Looking out through the automatic glass doors at the building entrance, the sun had already set completely. As I checked the train schedule on my phone while leaving the company gate, I headed to the nearest station. On my way to the station, I saw 2 colleagues from the same department as my husband, Thomas, heading the same way. I wonder if Thomas is already home. We stopped talking about our work at home recently, so I have no idea if Thomas is busy at work now. More precisely, talking about work at home has been making Thomas noticeably cranky, so the topic naturally fell out of our conversations. As I was swayed by the train on my way home, I gazed absent-mindedly at the scenery reflected in the window. When I was dating Thomas, we often timed our work to finish at the same time so we could go home together, but our schedules have been completely separate for the past year or 2. I noticed a young couple standing near the door. Maybe they're college students, but I heard them having a fun conversation about a movie they saw recently. The happy scene overlapped with my memories from the past. I clenched my eyes shut to hold back the emotions that grew to well up and shut down my field of vision. I'm home. After opening the front door, I called out, while taking off my pumps and looking at the shoes lined up in the entrance. It seemed that everyone else had already returned home. Behind me, the door to the living room opened, and the sound of slippers approached. Welcome home, Mary. You were late today. I'm home, mother-in-law. I'll prepare dinner right away. Oh no, you don't have to hurry. You're tired from working overtime, aren't you? No, not really. The meeting in the afternoon ran late, which is why I'm late, but it should settle down soon. As I responded cheerfully, I headed to the living room with my mother-in-law, Edna. After marrying, it had always been Thomas and me, but when his father fell ill and was hospitalized, we moved into his parents' home last year and have been living as a family of 4. Welcome back, Mary. You've had a tough day, haven't you? I'm back, I reply. My father-in-law, who was reading the newspaper on the living room sofa, greets me with a warm voice. Last year, he suffered from a sudden subarachnoid hemorrhage and underwent emergency surgery. While his condition was critical for a time, he's now living without any issues after completing his post-hospitalization rehab. He has a calm demeanor, and I've liked his friendly, easy-to-talk-to personality since the first day we met. Having served as the head of the finance department until his retirement, he's well-versed in financial knowledge and has often given me tips on managing the household budget. When I visited, we finished preparing dinner and gather around the table as a family. Anna came over for lunch the other day and I was surprised at how much her daughter Olivia has grown, Edna comments. They do say kids grew up faster when they're not yours, I respond. Anna is as beautiful as ever, and having a child really brings out her feminine side as a mother, she continues. I guess so, I reply. Anna is Edna's niece and Thomas's cousin. Edna often expresses disappointment. That's it. Thomas and I don't have children. She's not too happy about me continuing to work after our marriage and has hinted that she'd like us to have a child. Whenever we meet, honestly, I've always had a hard time dealing with Edna, especially since we started living together. She tends to bring up this topic, particularly on the days when I come home late from work. You could have had a child if it had been a little earlier, Mary. I suppose it can't be helped because you're busy with work. while I ambiguously nod along. I glance at Thomas, who is quietly eating his meal without looking at me. Thomas and I were colleagues at the same company and got married in our second year of dating. Though we were told that it would be best if I became a housewife if we had a child, we have been working together for 10 years since we got married, and we've yet to have a child. Both of us have longed for a child and have tried everything from herbal medicine to medical tests, but to no avail. While there is a sense of loneliness, we've decided to keep living as a couple and focus on our work. However, at some point, I began to feel an invisible wall between Thomas and me. Even though we married out of love and promised to make each other happy, our relationship has gradually grown cold. I think it started when Thomas began to struggle with his work. He didn't tell me anything, but I heard from a senior colleague in the same department that Thomas was distressed because he couldn't achieve the same results as his peers. Thomas is naturally a gentle person, not good under pressure, and has a habit of pushing himself too hard. I knew, without him saying anything, that he was feeling anxious and frustrated about the situation. However, whenever I tried to offer him a listening ear, he would stubbornly refuse to share his worries with me, repeating that he was fine and telling me not to worry. Since he continued to keep his worries from me, I couldn't press him further, and I felt helpless that I couldn't be there for him. Even so, on our days off, we'd make it a point to travel together or spend a relaxing day at home, treasuring our time together as a couple. When I became emotionally drained from the ongoing failures in our attempts to conceive, Thomas was there, silently supporting me all the way. That's why, even if I couldn't directly help solve Thomas's current problems, I intended to be by his side, creating moments of comfort and peace for him. The turning point was probably when I received a promotion at work. I was recognized for my achievements on the projects I participated in, and I was even one of the fastest among my peers to get promoted. That's amazing. Congratulations, Mary. I can't forget the expression on Thomas's face when he congratulated me. I was so emotional that I could only manage a simple thank you. As my work became busier, the distance between Thomas and me seemed to only increase. Eventually, we spent less time together, our conversations dwindled, and around the time when my income surpassed Thomas's, we barely even made eye contact. I would look at Thomas's back as he would finish his meal without uttering a word and leave the table. I can't help but wonder if I hadn't been afraid of rejection back then and had tried harder to support him. Could we have built a different relationship than we have now? When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was a bright white light of the fluorescent bulb. After blinking a few times, I started looking around. Apparently, I was lying in a hospital bed. When I looked down at my arm, there was an IV connected, and both of my legs were wrapped in numerous layers of bandages and casts. The moment I tried to move, a pain like I'd never felt before shot through my body. Ah! Tears welled up in my eyes from the sheer pain. My body felt as heavy as lead, and it seemed impossible to move. What on earth had happened? I tried to trace back my memories up until the moment I woke up. I remembered going to work at the usual time this morning, finishing up a meeting and report, and leaving work on time for the first time in a while. After leaving the office, I was headed toward the station. Then it hit me. On the way to the station, which was busier than usual due to the rush hour, I remembered hearing the screeching sound of sudden brakes from behind. The moment I turned around, I felt a violent shock. I realized I'd been hit by a car, and at that moment, fear rushed in alongside the pain spreading through my body. What condition is my body in now? The sound of footsteps approached, and suddenly, the curtain around my bed was opened. "Oh, Mrs. Johnson, you're awake, but you should not get up yet." A young female nurse called out to me in a rushed manner. "I understand you're confused, but your doctor will explain everything to you shortly. Please stay calm for now." Okay. After saying that, the nurse left in a hurry. A few minutes later, the doctor arrived and told me about the circumstances of the accident and the surgical procedures. Apparently, a truck that was being driven by a drowsy driver had crashed into the sidewalk, and I was unfortunately there and got knocked over from behind. I had been urgently transported to this hospital immediately after the accident, and it had been about half a day since the surgery. "Excuse me, but have you contacted my family already?" I inquired. We have contacted your husband and his parents who live with you to inform them about the accident and that the surgery has been completed successfully. However, they seem to be out somewhere and can't come right away, the doctor explained. I see. Thank you. Thomas is away on a business trip, and his parents have been on an overseas vacation since last week, the doctor continued. From the doctor's tone, I could somewhat imagine their reaction when they received the news. Even considering they were out, it didn't seem like the response you'd expect when being told a loved one has been in an accident. At least not to the point where someone else would hesitate to relay their reaction. I laughed bitterly, imagining Thomas's reaction when he found out I was in an accident. It just didn't connect to an image of him being worried about me. From the doctor's subsequent explanation, although there were no life-threatening conditions, the damage to both of my legs was particularly severe. They said the prognosis for walking again is not promising. As I received the explanation, it felt surreal, as if it was about someone else, not my own body. Thomas visited the hospital 3 days after the accident. It was surprising to see his pained expression when he saw me, injured all over, lying in the hospital bed. Sorry I'm late, he said. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry for interrupting your business trip, I replied. It had been a while since we last talked, and the atmosphere was awkward. Our conversation stalled while we both averted our eyes, and Thomas excused himself to talk to the doctor, leaving the room. I was unable to call out to him and could only watch him leave. It's been 2.5 years since the accident. The disabilities from the accident remain in my legs, and I've been forced into a wheelchair-bound life. The accident happened while I was leaving work, so I was able to stay with the company, but it was difficult to work the same as before, and I resigned about 6 months ago. Since resigning, I've been spending my time at home, but recently a few things have been bothering me. One is that Edna's attitude towards me has become noticeably harsher than before. Mary, do you have a moment? Edna asked. Yes, of course. I'm about to head out, but could you fold the laundry for me? It's just folding, so you can do it even if you can't move your legs, right? Yes, please be careful on your way. Well then, please get it done. Ever since I started spending my days at home, I've been on the receiving end of more and more snide comments. It seems she's unhappy with her daughter-in-law being at home all day and not working. Now, every time we meet, her requests come with a side of sarcasm. I sighed while folding the laundry. The other thing that's been on my mind is Thomas's job. According to a former colleague, Thomas seems to be losing his place at work more than ever before. Outperformed by juniors and subordinates who joined after him, he seems to be treated like an annoyance by his surroundings. He used to mostly keep to himself after coming back from work, but recently he's been taking out his frustrations on me more often. Must be nice, Mary. You don't have to worry about workplace relationships anymore, and you can eat without having to work. I heard from Mom you've been lazing around all day doing nothing. I wish I could have that lifestyle just once, Thomas remarked sarcastically. I no longer saw any trace of the once kind Thomas, who kept throwing sarcastic remarks at me. All I felt was sadness for the changed man he had become. I hate to ask this, but could you please leave this house? One night, Thomas abruptly said. What? What do you mean? I asked, bewildered. I mean just what I said. My mom and I have talked it over and decided. I turned to look at Edna, who was sitting next to Thomas. Mary, ever since you quit your job, you haven't contributed to the living expenses, nor have you helped around the house. You've just been staying at home all the time. To be blunt, it's a nuisance. If you stay here any longer, I don't... You think it's impudent to be leeching off of others without making any contribution to their household? Edna continued, a triumphant look in her eyes. Thomas was silent, without looking at me. Thomas has a tough job too. Just because you're married, he doesn't have an obligation to support you anymore. I turned my eyes to Thomas, who was looking down. Thomas is asking me to leave, a way of saying that you want a divorce. Yeah, that's it. I've been thinking about it for a long time. So after being together for so long, you have no feelings left for me. Why would there be? Of course not. Thomas began to speak as if a dam had broken. Do you have any idea how miserable I feel every time I see your face? You must have been looking down on me, right? You must have felt superior to me every day, thinking that you were better than me. It felt as though the threads we had spun together since we met were fraying one by one. I tolerated you because you were contributing to the household expenses, but things have changed now. You're just a good-for-nothing who neither works nor has money, Thomas said, clenching his fists, spitting out the words as if they were blood. I don't need you now that you can't earn money. The last thread snapped with a sound. I understand for the first time. Thomas looked at me. But I have a condition. All the procedures for the divorce agreement will be carried out through a lawyer. If you agree to that, I will pack up my things and leave within the week. Sure, that's fine, isn't it? Thomas silently nodded. Well then, that's how it is. Thomas jolted, looking at me. Thank you for everything until now and at last. Thank you for leaving me with nothing. With that, I left. A few days had passed since I left the house. When I checked the incoming call on my phone, it was from Thomas. After staring at the screen for a few seconds, I picked up the phone. Yes, Mary, I'm sorry. Could you please come back? What's this all about all of a sudden? I heard from my dad. Even after you quit your job, you've been covering our living expenses. You've been investing since you were working, haven't you? And now, you're able to cover living expenses with dividend income? Yes, that's right. So what? I left the household budget to you and my dad, so I didn't know anything. I thought we were living off my income, but we were mostly living off your income, weren't we? I really regret saying such terrible things. I'm sorry. After getting married and merging our finances, I started investing using my own income. Initially, I was encouraged to do so by my father-in-law, and I only consulted him about financial management and investments. So what am I supposed to do when I come back? Well, my dad says with my income alone, it's impossible to maintain the same standard of living as before. Besides, I'm not confident I can continue my current job indefinitely. So what you're saying is, please come back so we can live well. You really got some nerve. I could hear Thomas catching his breath